Hello and welcome to the Beyond Compulsion Academy training video. So, Mary, I was in the porn addiction for 9 or 10 years, and then eventually I met you, and you basically saved me with these 5 facts that literally rewired and changed my neural pathways. Today, we're going to be talking through a bit of a overview of the method that you've taught me. But before we get into all of that, do you want to just share a little bit about your experience and how you ended up here teaching men from all over the world how to actually stop porn addiction?
Well, first of all, I'm really happy that you were able to rewire your brain because you're such an awesome person, and being stuck in that addiction was just sad, right? So, yeah, 35 years experience. Started with my own nicotine addiction, which, I tried everything under the sun, and I thought, I am stuck with this. I'm either going to be miserable smoking or miserable trying not to smoke. And then I met my mentor, Patricia, and she taught me this method, and I was like, oh, thank God, something that is actually going to work, and I can change my wiring, right? So yeah, so and then over the years there's so much addiction that I just applied what I knew to all addictions, and it had a big focus on food compulsion. And then when I met you, here comes the porn epidemic, right? Which I wasn't focusing on, so I didn't realize just how epidemic it really was. But then all the work that I had done with food compulsion just like fit like a glove, right into the porn addiction stuff, because a lot of that thinking is the same, because you need to eat. And I mean, you don't need to have sex, obviously, but you need to intimate relationships. I mean, it's all part of it. But yeah, so it's I'm really glad it came along when I did, because man, I'll tell you, the guys we work with are right there thinking there's no help for me. I don't, there's no way out of this. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
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 it's kind of interesting, like taking your program as well, because I think it can help alleviate some of those feelings of shame. You know, where you're
yeah,
like this is through my sexual desires, or like, why do I keep on looking
yeah,
at this stuff that doesn't align with my values and things like that. But then when you take your program, what you realize is actually it is just a brain wiring. Like your
yeah,
brain's involved in a psychological emotional dependency on a mind's mood altering experience.
yes,
Essentially, you break it down, you have addicted neural pathways, and you need to get into those neural pathways to actually change them. But what everyone else seems to be doing is doing literally like the opposite. And in the program we start off with phase one, which is about actually getting connected to that neural pathway of compulsive desire. But
yes.
before we talk about this maybe a little bit more, do you want to share why the other methods for porn addiction recovery, which don't get into the neural pathway of compulsive desire, actually make things even worse, and why most people end up, in the cycle, being a circle
Yeah,
person, just always relapsing and then questioning like, what's wrong with me?
the hamster wheel, right? Yeah. Well, the thing is as far as I can tell, and all the work I've done over the years with food compulsion, seeing people, or all, not just food compulsion, but nicotine addiction, cocaine addiction, relationship addiction, gambling addiction, all of it. It's, people are trying to either get, not think about it, try to distract, or substitute a healthy behavior, which, you know, that sounds good on paper, right? But it doesn't, it's, go substituting some healthy behavior never really handles what you need to, handle by connecting to the neural pathway of compulsive desire. And so if you don't do that, then you're just maybe creating other pathways that are about some other distraction technique or whatever. You learn to play the guitar, or you get a good fitness workout or something, but it never changes the pathway. You can maybe distract yourself for some time, but if you don't get into that compulsive desire, you can't change it in a permanent way that results in the desire dissipating and then being extinguished. So you don't have
Mm,
to deal with it. Permanent mental freedom is possible, but
yeah.
it's not it's not understood that way, which is really unfortunate, because it really works against so many people, as far as like thinking, oh my God, if I'm always going to live this way, this is just who I am. I might as well just do it, because there's really
Mm,
no hope, you know? You
yeah,
can see why
yeah.
people give up, right?
Yeah. And the other thing is that people feel like they can't do it because they're in this state of deprivation. So they're constantly telling themselves, I can't do it, I can't watch porn, I can't watch porn, I can't watch porn. You got the whole no
Yeah.
fap thing, which is massive, and there's literally like millions of views on these videos talking about no fap, which is focused on not doing something. Whereas
Yes.
what we have to do is shift it all into, well,
Yes.
what am I choosing to do and why? And we're really focusing on actually getting into that neural pathway of compulsive desire, not being scared of it, not having blockers, not having,
Yeah.
you know, these different rules and conditions in our life where we try and remove all the triggers and instead get into that neural pathway and face
Yes.
that reality that you can actually choose to watch porn. Like that is an option for you.
Well, it's really quite amazing how much time we have to unprogram the guys to stop talking about the streaks and the blockers. They're hanging on to the blockers like it's just their lifeline, and that's all based or validates that helplessness thinking, you know? So, yeah, losing streaks and blockers is going to be one of the number one, you know, launching points to avoid the deprivation thinking, which leads to all the deprivation feelings, which are very uncomfortable and completely unnecessary. So
Yeah.
in this phase, we teach people how to avoid the feelings of deprivation so you can really get down to business and what you're dealing with, you know, and rather than remain circle person in the hamster wheel, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
100%.
absolutely.
And then the other thing that I see a lot is people denying that they want to do it because there's so much shame around porn in particular. And so they don't want to accept that they do want to do it. And so we really focus on, well, look, there's nothing wrong with you for wanting to watch porn. It literally is just a brain wiring, and you live in this messed up world
Yeah,
where your brain is susceptible to getting addicted to porn. And to me, it's like, how could you basically not get addicted to porn? Like with
right.
it, you know, being everywhere, it's free, it's available. It's like no
Uh,
education on it growing up. It's just, it's
I'm
insane.
glad my son is older. Yeah. So not that the older guys aren't in the same boat, but you know, the younger guys coming into their sexuality with all this exposure to porn online. I mean, it's kind of uh, inevitable. But yeah, as far as the dilemma goes, yeah, you want to do it and you want to stop doing it, but what's happening is people are out there trying to deny that wanting, and that'll only happen for a while, for an extended period of time, because then you get in it and then you try to deny that you want to stop doing it. And
Mm,
it's coming to terms with, and by changing the thinking, that both of these things are true. You know, you can try to think one for a while, but then there's a time limit on that. You have two realities, both refusing to be ignored, right?
yeah,
So we help people deal with that to get to, you know, understand this dilemma to ultimately get out of this dilemma. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And the
Yeah.
common sort of thought pattern I hear about denying that people want to stop is like, oh, it's normal, everyone does
Yeah.
it, it's not that bad. You know, I hear that all the time. But then when you can actually understand the consequences properly, you realize that, wait, no, this is like gonna probably be the biggest issue in your life, right?
Yeah.
So we do phase
It's not
one.
going away
Yeah,
by, yeah, denying it. Yep.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
in phase one, you know, we teach our clients fact one and fact two through the thorough education with quizzes at the end of each section. And then we go into phase two, right? So the drive behind the desire, looking for reasons. This is really interesting because in my sort of no fat porn addiction days, after every single relapse, I'd honestly like just spend time thinking like, oh, so what was the trigger? Why did I do this? Was I lonely? Was I feeling shame? Was I stressed out? Did I
Yeah.
go to the gym that day? Did I meditate? Did I make my bed in the morning? Was my diet okay? And I'd try and explain and rationalize and justify relapsing with some kind of reason. And I'd always be searching for reasons and trying to deal with the symptoms of the problem and that side of things instead of the actual root of the problem. So, Mary, do you want to talk a little bit more here about the drive behind the desire?
Yeah. And it's like you said before, you know, it's that the brain is wired this way. So the triggers, you could create some kind of environment that you're trigger free, which is a lot of the information out there. You know, got to
Mm.
remove all the triggers. Like, how on earth do you do that? You know, so but it doesn't matter because your brain is wired. I mean, it's going to come to you regardless if you get an external trigger, because you have internal wiring that goes from wanting to do it to acting on it, right? So, but and again, too, like you said, oh, it's stress, it's this, it's that. And now a lot of it is being validated by the medical professionals. Oh, you do it because you have an anxiety disorder. You do it because you have all this stress. You do it because you're depressed. You do it because la, 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 whatever. There's a million different disorders now. And that's why you do this,
Mm, mm,
rather than the reason you're stressed out and anxious and depressed is because you have this addiction in your life that's ruining your life, and you can't find a way to effectively alleviate it.
yeah, yeah,
Hello, stress, hello, anxiety, hello, depression.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
essentially, you're going to have compulsive desire until you deal with it directly, because compulsive desire refuses to be ignored. So it just
yeah,
persists, 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 like a child, like kicking, screaming, until you've actually dealt with the desire directly. It's going to continue in your life, which is why people may be able to go a certain amount of days without porn, but then, they have some urges and it feels
yeah,
relentless. They choose to go back into the addiction and then they're back in it. And that's why a lot of the guys we work with have been in the addiction for literally decades. I mean, I don't think we've even worked with anyone yet who's not been in it for like at least maybe 20 to 30% of their life.
yeah,
Pretty
absolutely.
insane, really.
Yeah.
Cool. So identifying the players, right? So we talk about three players in the addiction. We've got the rational mind, the addictive part of the mind, and the child self. Do you want to tell us a little bit about these different parts in the addiction, Mary?
Yes, 100%. Well, the one thing I want to just point out, initially here is that we're not going to do any deep inner child work. You know, there's a child self involved in this, especially with the pornography, because man, most of our guys are like 10, 10, 11 is the standard age. They're just kids, really, So there's a child self involved in the process, but we don't, what we find is most of our guys, the most traumatic thing is getting addicted to the porn. You know what I mean? It's not a lot of them don't have these horrendous childhoods that they need to go dig deep and do all this trauma work, right? So, but it's very important to understand that the child self is one of the players. And there's, the rational self, the child self, and then there's the addictive part of the mind. And when people start this process, the child self is on the same team with the addictive part of the mind. And so you've got this shrewd addictive part of your mind with all these ways to deceive, and it's easy to deceive a child, right?
Mm.
So you got to get that child self on your team, because otherwise you got the addictive part of the mind, right, trying to deceive you with, and then you've got a child self pulling on your pants leg going, I want, 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 right? So that simply just getting that, understanding that is what's happening, and then get that child self on the team with the rational self, right? So you guys get on the same team, and then rational self deals with the addictive part of the mind, in essence protecting the child self.
Yeah, yeah. It's been interesting for me as well because prior to meeting you and doing this method, I was really working on that child self kind of things. Like I got into internal family systems quite a lot. I learned a lot about acceptance commitment therapy and other therapies as well. But no matter what, and even like meditating an hour a day, right? But no matter what, the addictive part of the mind would always, always come along because that's one of the players in the addiction. And
Yeah,
some kind of thought pattern would come up, which I just didn't know how to deal with. And that's really like
yeah,
the premise of this whole method is how do you actually deal with the addictive part of the mind? And what do we
yeah,
mean by that? Well, it's thoughts like, I don't care. I can just have one quick peek. I'll start tomorrow. Oh, it's not that bad. Oh, at least it's not porn if it's just like on Instagram on the explore page. Or oh, maybe I'll just like activate X and scroll until I potentially see something. It's all
yeah,
those sort of thoughts. Like, how do you actually deal with the inevitable moment of compulsive desire and the addictive part of the mind when it's relentless? That's
yeah.
really the
I
key.
can't do this. I'm going to fail. I've
Yeah.
never been able to do it before. I just have some kind of fucked up sexual desire. Something's wrong with me. All that self-deprecation is another, form of the addictive thinking. But then if you don't if you're trying not to think about it and pushing away any addictive thoughts, you have no opportunity to understand them and go,
Mm,
okay, there's actually a very specific category this junky thought falls into, and this is how I deal with it, with the script, obviously, but then you can do on another level, just like really talking back to that junky thinking, but you got to understand it first. And there's no way you're going to understand it if you're just trying to push it away all the time.
yeah,
And you have a child, when you're trying to understand the addictive part of the mind, you got a child self pulling on your pants like the whole time,
yeah.
it's, yeah. So it's a important piece. Yes.
100%. And the outcome of doing this work and putting the rational mind back in control and understanding and outsmarting the addicted part of the mind is that you then get to develop a really healthy, good relationship with the child self from a place of
Yeah.
clarity. And so now I realize that like all the previous work I'd done with the meditation, internal family systems, all of this sort of stuff, it was pretty useless because at the end of the day, I was still relapsing. I was
Yeah.
still in the addiction. So it was the wrong way around it, you know?
I'm talking about that. There's a number of the guys now are just like so connecting with their child selves, which they're not doing inner child work, but part of really truly overcoming this addiction and protecting that child self, it's just an added benefit. And they're just, some of them are so cute about it, just like reconnecting with their child self. I love it so much.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. We've heard some really
Yeah.
good comments over the last few weeks.
Yeah.
All right. And next we have get, give up, and glamorize.
It's
So
such an esoteric title, like what the hell is this,
what I'd love for you to just cover quickly here is
Sure.
actually this sort of illustration, the get out of it versus get
Yeah.
out of, and just talking about how choosing to engage one time is just stopping that temporary discomfort of
Yeah.
withdrawal. Can you just kind of like sort of talk about that a little bit, Mary? Because I think that's so key
Yeah.
and so misunderstood.
Well, the thing is that when you give into this addiction, what you're going to get, when you look at it, you get a whole lot of shit. You get some temporary relief, but you get a lot of shitty feelings, and then you're giving up so many things that are incredibly important to you. But you can see this and you can know this, but then the addictive part of the mind is just going to glamorize it on so many levels. Oh, fear of missing out. I'm going to miss this Instagram, miss whatever. But and so you give into it because you're glamorizing it so much, but get out of it versus get out of. If you got to shift that perspective, it's not what you're trying to, it's not what you're going to get out of it, because clearly you're going to feel like shit, right? But you're trying to get out of that temporary discomfort of withdrawal. That's what's happening. That's what you're accomplishing when you give into it. And then you're right back in the hamster wheel, right back in the cycle, because you've convinced yourself to give in. So we
Mm.
teach people how to not have to do that.
Yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah.
talk quite a bit in the later phases about the straight line, right? And the
Hmm.
difference between straight line and circle person. And I think this is really important when it comes to the discomfort of withdrawal because people have this misconception, once they've got their script, that they're going to be using their script now 100 times a day for the next year. But the reality is, you only feel like you're going to have this desire all the time and it's going to be on your mind all the time because every time you relapse, that's what strengthens the addictive neural pathways and puts you back inside of the
Yeah. It's
addiction.
a
But
lie.
but when you stop it, like when you stop the addiction correctly in the right way by dealing with compulsive desire, like using a 5 fact script, for example, or just thinking through that desire in the right way, which is what we teach basically, well, you're going to stop having those desires all the time because you're going to start actually changing your neural pathways. It doesn't last forever. As Mary said in the first video, permanent mental freedom is possible. It really, really
Yeah,
is.
that's about.
Mm,
So yeah, like you say, when you give in and then you stay in it, you stay in it, you stay in it. What that does is it confirms like, oh, I'm right. I'm never going to get over this because I'm either going to be miserable doing it or I'm going to be miserable trying not to do it. When the reason that you're miserable trying not to do it is because you are giving in and intermittently reinforcing it. So thank
mm,
God that when you have the script, you don't have to give in and you get to see what it's like, that third option, which is permanent mental freedom, not misery versus misery, right? Permanent mental
yeah,
freedom option is the third option. Yes.
yeah, yeah. And this
Yeah.
is really where fact three comes in and like taking that seriously and just understanding that slipping will never happen. Like this
Yeah.
idea of, oh, I just had a slip up is so, so detrimental.
Yeah.
It's
You
so,
just sent me that meme of the slip up, right? That you just
yeah,
saw
yeah.
it's part of the journey or whatever to pick yourself up,
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
right?
You mean
Yeah,
the
you
one
just
on
sent me
WhatsApp?
that. Yeah.
That was from a different porn addiction recovery coach
Yes.
who I talked to. Yeah, he sent me like a message and it was something like, yeah, if you have a slip up, just pick yourself up and go again or
Yeah.
whatever it was, right? And
Get
it's like
back on the horse.
it just completely denies the actual
Oh,
reality of addiction. And
100%.
if someone within our program was to choose to engage in their compulsive behavior, like if someone did relapse, we'd be here for them and give them everything they need to actually get on the straight line and fully succeed, right?
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
zero shame or judgment, but we also don't say like, oh, that's fine, like you're good,
Yeah.
just carry on, because that would go against everything that's true about the reality of addiction.
Yes. You're going to learn the reality of addiction one way or another. You're going to learn it by doing, which is a long, ugly road, or you're going to learn by thinking and that's exactly what we teach people,
Mm.
how to think it through in a way they don't have to give in that first time. Because yeah, you're going to learn the reality of addiction one way or another. Why
Mm.
not learn it in a way that really serves you, and so you can move through this thing relatively quickly, and get to a place of not plaguing your life, the mire
Yeah.
of addiction. Yeah.
Just another point on that as well. It's worth mentioning that the way we teach things is about training first. So understanding the addictive part of the mind in detail, understanding the strategies, tactics, exactly what to do at all times. So you're crystal clear throughout. And then and only then would you actually start even trying to stop the behavior. This is
Yeah.
crucial because a lot of people come to us having done, streaks, these ups and downs, but really what they're doing, and this is so important because it goes against pretty much everyone else out there on the internet, is what most people are doing is they're just trying to manage and control an addiction. They're trying to reduce the frequency, relapse once every few months or something like that. But the way we teach things is you're probably going to be continuing to choose to engage up until you're at a position where you actually are fully prepared to like take on the addictive part of the mind with the right training and get through every single urge. Now, dealing with those urges is what's going to change those neural pathways. And then over time, they lessen and lessen and lessen because you're going to be in the process of rewiring your brain. But if you do choose, and it is always a choice, everything we do in life is a choice. If you choose to engage in your compulsive behavior once, if you relapse, you will be back in that addiction indefinitely.
Yeah.
You can't just sort of have these ups and downs and think, oh, I can get away with it. That's just not how addiction works, to be very, very straight.
Yeah, and you said something about the script being like specific. We're going to teach you very specifically how to deal with everything that comes up. It's not going to be like, okay, kind of like this, broad method or way of thinking that's kind
Mm.
of like, well, maybe I should apply this in this situation. It's all going to be like dialed, dialed in. This, you're thinking this, here's what you do. You did this is what you do. Here's the next step, exactly what to do at any given moment, right? So you're
Yeah.
not just kind of trying to figure out how to apply this to my life. No, it'll be very, very laid out in a very specific way. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And on that point, what can happen is when you're in the addiction, you may have what we call unanswerable questions. Unanswerable questions are basically questions which, well, as the name suggests, they can't be answered, right? And they're
Yeah.
designed intentionally by the addictive part of the mind to get people into a state of helplessness. Now, we have a very, very specific script to deal with
Okay.
these unanswerable questions because the sort of thoughts that will come up when you're in an addiction is what is wrong with me? When will I be free? Will I be stuck in this forever? Is there something wrong with my sexual desires? How do I do this? Does this
Endless
count as a
questions.
relapse? It's just
Yeah.
endless, like one after another,
Endless.
after another, after another. And it's so crucial to disengage from those questions because they actually take us away from the present moment where we have a choice to think through using a script and actually make a choice in that moment as to whether you choose either to go back into the addiction indefinitely or do you choose temporary discomfort by thinking it through rationally in that moment and changing the neural pathways because that is also an option as well every single moment of your life.
Yeah, it's literally one of the shrewdest ploys of the addictive part of the mind because, in this day and age as well, when people have addictions, they're encouraged to be mindful, to think about what they're thinking, right? To understand why. Why am I doing this? Let's dig into all the reasons I'm doing this, right? You're encouraged to do that when if 99.9% of the time, those questions are not going to be answerable, and they're designed, like you said, by the addictive part of the mind. And they're not only just like, oh, kind of these unanswerable questions, but it's so important to disengage, because when you engage with unanswerable questions, then it leads you directly to feelings of helplessness and deprivation thinking, which adds to the, a whole negative, level of feelings to the problem. And, a lot of times people with these addictions and all these unanswerable questions, now they get diagnosed over, they're overthinkers, and next thing they're ADHD or they're obsessive compulsive or all this, because they're when you're thinking about questions you can't answer, yeah, guess what? You're going to spin out in your head. I mean, that we call it the tornado for a reason, which is
Mhm.
what we call it in the program. So,
Yeah,
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 absolutely.
real critical piece. Absolutely.
And it's also one of the reasons why so many people feel so helpless, like so stuck, trapped, lost, confused, overwhelmed, so unsure of themselves. And when
Yeah,
you
of
know
course.
exactly how to deal with all of that, like you're crystal clear on this stuff,
Yes.
the mental clarity is just insane. Like I can't even describe it. You know what to do at all times. Like there's literally no gaps. Like there's no doubt, because even if you have a question and it's related to the compulsion, in that moment you would just go straight to your script and think it through and use the opportunity to rewire your brain. And then over time you don't have these questions anymore. I had a client on a call with me earlier today, Mary, and he said to me, Tom, when will I stop using my script? And I said to
Yeah.
him, well, that's an unanswerable question. And I know that because I never ever have that question myself. Like I never have that question anymore. I think I
Yeah.
did maybe like early on, like when I first took the program, but I would never have that question anymore because I know it's unanswerable. So we just
And it's
disengage.
irrelevant.
Yeah, it's not going to get you
Irrelevant.
anywhere. Yeah, like
Yeah.
where is it going to land? And then
Yeah.
obviously we have the one and only relevant question. This is it. Like
Yes.
that's all you need to ask yourself is what am I choosing to do and why? Because we're always focusing on doing something. We never want to be trapped in that no fappy kind of mindset of, oh, I'm gonna not watch porn, I'm gonna not do this, whatever. It's not gonna get you anywhere. We're always doing something. And the thing that
Yeah.
we focus on doing is proactively attacking and changing the neural pathways by dealing
Yeah.
with the addicted part of the mind correctly.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and not to confuse this why
Mm,
to why. What is it from my childhood? What is it in my makeup? What is it that, why am I going, all of the whys? That's not the question we're asking here. This is the
mm,
question to lose the resistance, because there's going to be resistance to using the script, because the addictive part of the mind is going to put up that resistance. This
mm,
question is going to help people shift into out of willpower into what am I choosing to do and why I'm choosing to use this script, because this is what I want for myself in the long run. It's not about why you do it, oh my God, let's go to therapy for 20 years and figure out why. No, that's not the deal here. This is why am I gonna choose to use my script to change my pathways? Because I want, right? And it
yeah.
totally gets people out of a position of resistance and out of those unanswerable questions as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Because then you can see that this is the one and only relevant question. You don't need
yeah,
to spin in circles in this tornado, feeling uncertain, feeling unsure of yourself. What am I choosing to do and why? Straight into fact one, read through the scripts, change your neural pathways, sorted, right? Um, and then, I mean, we don't really need to go into too much of this stuff. One thing I will just touch on though is the mental stance, because I think this is so, so important as well. Is like
absolutely.
when you're
Yeah,
doing, the no fap streaks, or you're in therapy, or you're doing all the conventional sort of methods that a lot of people talk about, things like 12 steps as well, a lot of it's very, very defensive. It's like remove the triggers, install the blockers, learn more about yourself and set up all these different rules or whatever to try and avoid the urges. But what's so essential is just understanding that actually we want to face the addictive part of the mind head on And it's through doing that that we actually get to this place of empowerment and we're feeling sure of ourselves because we're dealing with our own mind correctly. And that's what's going to lead to the real freedom, which most people are truly searching for and many people never actually experience.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. Mental stance, critical. Absolutely critical.
Yeah. And then reasonable versus compulsive as well. Just shifting the stance from, oh, I don't know whether this is porn or not into actually you do know. And with other behaviors as well, with food and maybe screen time, you will always know what is reasonable. I think this whole mental stance of
And
empowerment. Yeah.
there's a lot. Can you go back to that one just for one
Yeah,
sec?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn on each one of these. We've got a
Mm,
lot to talk about on each one, but the smart versus safe, this is the play it safe is very much all of the, avoid the triggers, try to think about something else, change your lifestyle, don't go here, don't do this, right? All of that stuff, because if you do, then you're going to be helpless in the face of the addiction, right? So smart, I mean, playing it smart, understanding the addictive part of the mind, and back to proactively going after it with a very solid offensive strategy, not going on the defense, right? That's
mm.
going to be that's the smart. And then the rest of those phases, the six and everything, that's just ongoing, continuing education on exactly what to expect at any given moment so that you can maintain, once you get through the withdrawal process with, change your pathways with the script, then down the road, you have just this ongoing, solid understanding and education on exactly what to deal with. And you're always prepared. So you don't have to ever worry into the future about it.
Yeah, just a point on worrying into the future about it. This is a story I tell so often is the one of me, just after I'd learned this method. I was like 3 weeks in or whatever. And by the way, we don't count streaks here at all. But it was like it wasn't long after I'd learned the method. And I was in Tenerife on holiday. And can you remember Mary? I was like, Mary, when I get back from this holiday, I'm gonna
Yeah.
be back in my flat. I'm gonna be on my own. I'm gonna be lonely. I'm gonna probably feel pretty tired. It's like a late flight, all this sort of stuff. And I was like genuinely really, really worried about having urges when I got back from the holiday. And do you wanna share exactly what
Well,
you
I
said
think
to me?
what I most likely what I told you is you don't have to worry about when you get home. If you're willing to be in a porn addiction, you can do it right now. Don't you have a phone with you or, whatever? And of course, to recognize that future thinking, which is one of the ploys, right? One of the categories of addictive junkie thinking, right? So, and
Yeah.
to take that opportunity to think it through in that moment, which I think you did.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So like I just spent the holiday having a really, really good time. But then when I was back in like the apartment on my own, I was there reading the scripts because I understood that if I'm thinking about relapsing in 4 days' time, that means I'm actually wanting to engage in my compulsive behavior right now. And that's why you can literally eliminate all concern and worry about ever relapsing again once you know that any worry is actually just the addictive part of the mind trying to get you to engage. And so therefore you would use a script in that moment to rewire those neural pathways correctly.
That makes me think of the Marcus Aurelius quote, right? Something like, you don't have to worry into the future because you'll be prepared then with what you have now, right? You
Mm.
know what you'll do, right? And you
Yeah.
will be prepared then. So no need to worry into the future.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. I
I'm
think
I'm,
what
radically misquoting him, but something like that.
I've actually got a cheeky little Marcus Aurelius quote in my own mind for you if you want one. Certainty of judgment. Wait, no. Oh God, I came across
You
really
butchered as
confident.
bad as I did.
I butchered it worse because at least I went into it like, oh yeah, I've got one, yay, and then I
Yeah.
just got it completely wrong. No, but it was all you need in life for these certainty of judgment in the present moment, action for the common good in the present moment, and an attitude of gratitude in the present moment for anything that comes your way. And you see, he talks about the present moment 3 times there. Funnily
Yes.
enough, in the script, we talk about the present moment
Three
3 times as
times.
well. So there
I
we have
love
it.
it. I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
that. Yeah.
But I did all right
Yeah.
in the end there. I did all right in the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, final thing to say here, I suppose, is you're not alone. Like we've worked with a lot of people. to the extent now where we're even doing recorded live sessions with some of the guys who have been in the program, and you can watch these back as well. And then we also have straight line calls. These are with guys who, again, been through the program, they've actually got on the straight line and they've, spent months and months without choosing to engage in their compulsive behavior. And we're adding more and more videos basically every
Yeah.
week right now. So yeah, we'll wrap it up there. Hopefully that gives a bit of an insight and a bit of an overview into what we're all about at the Beyond Compulsion Academy. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you know that you're not alone and you absolutely can rewire your brain and that permanent mental freedom is possible. And yeah, if you would like to join the Beyond Compulsion Academy, then get in touch, or I'm sure there'll be a link somewhere around this video. Cheers.
Cheers.
Nice one. Bye bye.